What's up, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of Shady. Do we have a name yet? Or we? What do we go? The
I don't
working
know,
title,
man.
though. The working title was just fun with our group, the Norwegians. But obviously, we're not full Norwegians. We just are, descendants from that line of blood. But dude, I gotta tell you, we've talked about One Piece for years on years now, and you're one of the most knowledgeable dudes about One Piece that I know. I always appreciate your insight, and now we're gonna do a show every week or so about One Piece topics. And I got to tell you, dude, I'm extremely excited. So go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself and how you got into One Piece.
Yeah, for sure, man. Appreciate you having me on this and, wanting to collab with me more. But yeah, so I got into One Piece kind of just the same way as most people, I would say, starting with DBZ to Nami and then kind of just trending off into more anime in that regard. One Piece was probably one of the first five that I went start to ongoing, and then it just kind of stuck with it from there. I did used to do a little bit of content creation on the YouTube side of things, so that was a fun era for me. I did unfortunately stop doing that, so I've been kind of having a craving to really get back in there. And Doug has been on fire with his content, so I'm like, let me link with Doug, man.
And I definitely appreciate that, dude. So let me give you guys a little bit of background here because I started One Piece. My friend Kadeem, it was when Doffy and Luffy were in their fight, and there was the break after the smoke clears, and Luffy says Gear Fourth, so you don't get to see Gear Fourth until the Oda was taking a break, and he's explaining this fight to me, and he's going into details. So I think this is like 2016 ish, somewhere in there. If I'm not exact, I don't, don't get after me for that, but somewhere in that range was when they were in their fight, and he's explaining this to me. And for whatever reason, I watched DBZ, UU, and some of those other ones, and I never got the stretchy pirate. Like it never clicked for me at that point in my life. And I was still young. I was like when I was 10 ish, 10, 11, 12, and it never clicked for me. But then Kadeem was explaining this fight to me. I'm like, whoa, I feel like I am missing something here because, he didn't give me any spoilers, but that Gear Fourth cliffhanger was like, damn, I need to really check out what's going on here. And then, I get into it and I get caught up to where the time skip goes. And I feel like at that point I met you guys online because I was sharing like Trafalgar Law, like content. Like I'm like, dude, Law could beat Zoro. And then I like met you guys and it was like, these guys are all One Piece fans and they're all super knowledgeable. So I'm like learning as I'm going with you guys. And then we get into a text chat. And,
Yep.
Now almost 10 years later, 8, 9 years later, we're still doing it and we're still talking about One Piece. So here we
Really
are.
has
So
been that long, huh, man?
it's like, now that I look at it, I'm like, dang, we've been talking about One Piece for a long time, among other things. But, at the core of it, we were One Piece fans. So
Yeah.
it's pretty great how, this has all come together. And I appreciate you wanting to do this and spend some time with me talking about stuff that we really appreciate. So, um, when did you start reading One Piece?
So I can't pinpoint the exact date. I think it was 2016 when they were just announcing the stuff on Zoe about Raizo being safe. That's around the time. I can't pinpoint the
Mhm.
exact chapter, but yeah, I watched the entire Dressrosa anime, which was forever. And then because that's about the time when the Zoe manga was going on,
Mhm.
So I started reading Zoe and then was week to week since then.
And that's incredible because I picked it up to read. I would say, man, it would have to be probably early before Wano, so it'd have to be probably Whole Cake Island, very beginning of Whole Cake Island, because I was late to it. I mean, I really was. But also you got to remember, guys, watching the anime from start all the way and then when you figure out that some of this filler, like there's actual filler stuff that you can skip. I
Yep.
never got that, so it took me a while to get there, and then I started reading probably at the beginning of Whole Cake, probably similar to Zoa too, right in that area.
For
So,
sure.
but it's been a pleasure, man. What we're here today to discuss, though, we're going to talk pre-time skip Straw Hats. Now, Shady, we do know that some of the moments are not equal for all the Straw Hats. So if they are a little flimsy, you guys know why, because there wasn't always a lot of fleshed out for the entire crew. We've got the core five and we've got the extras. So we're going to do our best to get 3 for each, but the goal is to get 3 moments for each Straw Hat. And we're going to start with Brook. Now, Brook post time skip Shady is one of my favorites. I think he has been absolutely incredible post time skip. Pre time skip, what's your number one moment for Brook?
Okay, so we're gonna go number one first,
Actually,
like in terms
sorry,
of
correct.
best
Well, no, let's
three.
go three.
Okay. Yeah, so again, Brook is kind of tricky because he gets introduced so late, right? And Thriller Bark's
Right.
kind of his introductory arc, you get his backstory and things like that. But I actually like when Brook has his quote unquote intro into the island, not when he meets them on the ship, but when he saves Robin and Frankie from the spider and he's kind of sitting in
Yes.
the Binks brew and just kind of entering, being so calm and collected as if he's been on this island trying to get his shadow back for years, right? So that
Right.
soothing demeanor was just really interesting to me. He's always just been like an interesting character in that regard.
Yeah, and that's what I like about him is while you can see two sides of him, you get that playful, oh, let me see your panties, and then you get that moment where he's like, oh, I just cut you, and then he gets that
Yep.
cutaway.
And that's
I
exactly what he does in that moment. Yeah.
exactly.
For the first time.
I'm gonna actually go with the backstory of the Rumbar Pirates as my number three. The
Okay.
the Laboon connection. I really like that because it kind of ties them back to it just that friendship, and then Luffy meets Laboon, the crew meets Laboon, and then they get to meet Brook by just pomp and circumstance, so that kind of thing. So I'm gonna go with Laboon for number three for me. Number
Okay.
two, I'm actually gonna go Ryuma, fighting Ryuma. I thought that was super cool. Like the fact that you're fighting, it's not necessarily Ryuma, his soul and everything, but you're fighting his body, what's left of him. I thought that was really cool. And it's a great connection that leads into Zoro. So I always thought that was nice. So I'm gonna have him fighting Ryuma as my number two.
For sure, for sure. I don't have the Ryuma moment on my list because I see that as more of a Zoro theme, but I do like the
Fair.
connection that you're bringing up there with how they're the two swordsmen of the crew, and Zoro helps getting his shadow back in that regard. But my two is actually your three, which is that whole entire moment basically with Laboon. Just an incredible connection, honestly.
Yep.
When you meet Laboon, it's like, yeah, sure, there's this pirate crew that he's waiting for. That's cool. But how Oda connects that into that
Yep.
becoming an actual crewmate, that's really good storytelling
It
and
was
really
it,
good
it
payoff.
was. It was excellent. Number one, go ahead with your number one.
Okay, I'm gonna assume it's gonna be that we're gonna have the same one here, but I think it's just the Bink Sake, or maybe not. I don't know, but it's mine's the Bink Sake at the same time as the Rumbar Pirates are dying, while also seeing it with the Straw Hats. I feel like that's just one of the best post arc celebrations,
Yeah,
honestly, and just a fantastic moment for him to
and
join
you
the crew that way.
and that's my number one also.
Yeah,
The music with Luffy, obviously we have the panel sitting behind you with him laying on the piano and Brook playing. And he didn't want to he said no because he had to help Laboon, but then the Laboon connection ties all back into that moment also. Again, like you said, it's a great celebration for the Straw Hats. A really nice moment. I think, you know, Brook doesn't have a lot post time skip or pre time skip, I mean, but he has some really nice, sentimental type moments.
100%, 100%. I like how they actually get a musician after Luffy kind of hinting at it for a long time.
Right.
I really like that because it seemed
It,
like a joke, right?
it
Throughout the
did.
throughout the series, but it's actually a legitimate thing now.
Yeah, no, you're 100% correct on that one. Our next One Piece character we're going to discuss is Cyborg Franky. Cyborg Franky, again, another guy. I like the fact that he was the shipwright, and they had so many issues with the ship up until that point, and then they finally get Franky when it's almost too late. Kind of interesting how that happens. But the new ship comes along. Franky's obviously the shipwright, creates the ship, but it always was Usopp trying to patch the ship, and then they finally get to Franky. Go ahead, Shady. Your number three Franky moment.
Yeah, so what I have for three is just the moment where he builds the Thousand Sunny, how it just shows him and Iceberg working together, kind of patching, their differences and their beef that they kind of had, and
Right.
just kind of seeing them actually in their craft, building a ship like that within, I think they did what, was it 3 days?
Yes, because
Something like
yeah,
that?
they were gonna leave. Yeah, yes, so it was right in there, 3 days.
Yeah, so I'm
Um,
gonna go with that for the actual moment.
that's a good choice. I was actually gonna have that at my next spot, but my number three spot, I actually have it the fight right here with the CPO, that straight right when he first like
Yeah.
we get to see that he's like a rough and tumble guy, but then we actually get to see him fight and get to see that he is a strong combatant and a physically strong fighter. I always kind of wanted to see a little bit more between him and Luffy, because just to see him kind of fight and see where he stood with Luffy at that point. But getting to
Yep.
see him and he throws that straight right and the chain comes out, all of his weapons were always super cool to me. So I thought that fight was a fun one for him.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
that's definitely good. And it was cool seeing him scrap with base Luffy on Water 7
right.
too, because that was just impressive in and of itself, right?
And I always thought, man, he's pretty strong. I might have him, but power scale we'll always get into later.
Sure.
Number 2 moment was building the ship. I
Okay.
thought that was the creating a pirate ship to me is just fascinating. The way everything would tie in and everything he incorporated into the ship. A piece of all the straw hats kind of got put into the ship. I thought that was excellent too. So that was my number 2. What is your number 2?
Okay, so my number two, maybe you'll have it, maybe you won't now, kind of since I see the direction you're heading in. But when he destroys the blueprints on Ennie's lobby,
Yeah,
that was just, an epic kind of conclusion that follows in from his backstory, right? With Tom and
with everybody, yes.
Pluton and everything. So that was an epic moment. He's like, screw it, I'm just going to destroy it.
Yeah, that was a good one. That's a really good one. Yeah, that kind of convinces. Actually, because I don't have that, I'm going to make that my number 1 because
Okay.
now that you say that, I'm like, man, I should have had that on there.
For
No,
sure.
well said. I'm going to move that to my number 1. What is your number 1 Frankie moment?
Okay, so maybe I'm cheating a little bit here, but my number one moment is kind of like his final conversation with Tom. And I guess that's more of like a Tom moment, but it is his
Yeah,
backstory, so I'm going to count it. And I just think everything that Tom taught him, from the ideology of shipbuilding and how it's not inherently evil or good to build a ship, but obviously people can use the ship for destructive and bad things. And that's why Tom was being arrested for building the Oro Jackson for Gold Roger, right?
yeah,
But even so, he sticks to his ideology of shipbuilding, telling Frankie, don't ever be ashamed of anything you build, right? Even though
for
it was
sure.
Frankie's battleships that destroyed, that attacked them, it's not his fault. It's just ships. He built the ships and he takes pride in the ships. So I feel like just that whole entire final moment is like the number one Frankie moment. I'm gonna cheat and say
Yeah,
that.
that is because it's so emotional for Frankie. I think that completely works, and I always I like, which is kind of a bonus one, but Robin having to grab his balls to get him on, to get him to go with the crew. I always
Oh,
thought
that
that
was
was a fun
that
one
was
and kind of
brutal.
a and like just kind of fun, kind of side gag type thing. So, but again, Frankie, another person who's really come on strong post time skip, also, which
Hundred
we'll
percent.
probably get into eventually.
100%.
Next, we have Nico Robin, Miss All Sunday. Nico Robin, she's got great layers to her and everything she's had to deal with. Um, Shady, you're number 3. I'm assuming we have the same 3 here, but go ahead.
Maybe not. I don't know, because I was always a fan of Robin in her Miss All Sunday kind of era. So I wanted to include something like that. But I love it when she just destroys Pell's neck and just kind of fully fleshes out the ability and how Hatch. It's one of the few early Hatch Devil Fruits. So we're
Mhm.
stuck, still kind of in that phase of like, dang, like what's the limit to these powers of these Devil Fruits? So I feel like Robin kind of embodies that, as well as just the mystery and darkness of her character.
That's that. The fact that Pell survived Alabasta is kind of a problem,
Pretty
but
BS. Pretty BS for
but
sure.
we could go on about that for a while. My number 3, I'm actually going to have Robin showing up on the ship when she
Okay.
shows up and and nobody knows how she got there and she's kind of messing with them. She takes Luffy's hat. I thought that kind of like added into her mystique. And to me, when we first saw her, I was like, oh, she's going to be a legitimate problem because she can just, and then because you don't get to see the hands until we actually get introduced to her and how
Mhm.
she's moving her limbs outside and using her devil fruit, kind of how you mentioned, but you didn't see her taking the stuff from them. So it even played in a little bit more to, okay, what can she really do? So her showing up on the ship as Miss All Sunday and Vivi freaking out. So because she has a little bit more knowledge of the 1 through 10 scale. I
Yep.
liked Robin showing up on the ship unannounced and everybody being kind of freaked out by her.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the more interesting ways someone's joined the crew. Like you just pull up and you're like, I'm on the crew now. I don't have
Well,
any purpose anymore.
when she did that later, she's like, I'd like to join the crew. And I was like, and Luffy's just like, yeah, man, we'll take you.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
My number 2 is her relationship with Saul, going back, everything she dealt with in her background, you know, the Buster call, all that stuff, extremely emotional. Yeah, she literally will pull out your heartstrings when you go through her backstory. So her and Saul, and then the way he's laughing and she takes his laugh, I always thought that was really good. That kind of, brings a tear to your eye. What's your number 2?
Yeah. And I have the exact same thing, honestly. So I think we're probably going to line up pretty well
Yeah,
here. So
she's
you said it
pretty
well.
straightforward.
Yeah.
And then obviously number 1, do you want to say it?
I want to live.
Oh man, that's just so perfect. That is like pre-time skip One Piece. Bang. If you want to, yeah, no, perfection. And then, Luffy telling her that he wants to hear it, and you can see the tears are already down her face. Awesome, awesome stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about her eventually, but I think it is criminal that she does not have hockey.
Yeah, yeah,
she spent time with the revolutionaries. Like,
yeah, for sure. It also makes you wonder if they're gonna get it, if like the middle trio is gonna get it, because logically probably should happen, right?
They need it, don't they?
I would think so.
We'll get to this someday.
Yeah, yeah.
But when Blackbeard and them fight, their crew, if they go down the way that some people think, they feel like it's a disadvantage not having hockey. Franky could have had hockey in that moment on Egghead when they all 3 punched Saturn. That would have been a perfect introduction for him. Robin, when she went or when she went into her demon mode, that would have been perfect. And then you give it. Why would Brook not have it?
Yeah, especially
because
he
cut Soul, so maybe not for him.
Yeah, I just think, I guess, when you look at the contrast in how they're going to fight the Blackbeards, what are they known for, right? They're Devil Fruit Merchant crew. So it's like, how do you combat that? Well, you're going to need better hockey than them, obviously.
Hey, and we'll obviously get into that later. Robin, obviously, fantastic stuff.
Yes.
And then we'll go Chopper. Chopper's going to be a little bit tougher. I'm struggling to find a third one. What was your number 3?
So my number 3 was the first monster point usage.
That's my number 1, dude.
Oh, okay, that's your number 1.
I don't know what it was, dude. Let's discuss it here for a second. But the way he hypes it up because of the tax on his body and everything, and you get to see something so small turn into something so gigantic and awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for me, it's number 1. I thought it was awesome, and the way he smacks away the guy, and yeah, he says, if I take 3, I might die, but I want to save my friends. And it just, that's my number 1 for him. So
it's
I'm
really
interested to see where you go from here.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess to add to that, I just like the demeanor of the pre-time skip monster point, because it's uncontrollable.
It's a monster.
Uncontrollable. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And the way in also he comes out of that shadow, or there's like that smoke. We can kind of see it down here in the corner, but he comes through that smoke and you can see it's a massive thing, but you don't really know. Yeah. No, Monster Point was my number 1 for Chopper. So now I'm interested where you go from here. What is your 2 then?
Yeah. So my 2 is when he's riding the sleigh down, about to join the crew after his conversation with the doctor. And honestly, it's very aesthetic, the reason I chose it. The soccer is booming. There's a really cool double spread of him looking like, flying with the sleigh. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just a good culmination of what went down and him joining the crew and everything with the arc. It's just an iconic moment to me.
And now that you bring that up, his relationship with the doctor, and then the way she kind of forces him to leave was perfect for her, but that's not really his moment. But she had to force him to leave for her own good, and I think that was really well done. My number 2 was when he saves Iceberg and Polly when he's carrying the sword and he's getting them out of there. I always, and it kind of coincides with it, he uses them a lot more pre-time skip, but all of his different forms. Like, how Dalton could only do like a couple forms, but then everybody's like, whoa, Chopper can do 7, or, and then he adds a couple more. I always thought, the ability to change all of his forms and adding that layer to Zoans was cool.
Yeah, right. Like he can use them strategically in battle based on what's needed. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
when
was
he was
always
fighting
that
the
was
two
always a cool
dudes at the same
concept.
time and he's going in and out of forms was really
Yeah,
cool. So
and
you're number one then.
yeah. So my number one is I kind of cheated again, but I'm still gonna do it. It's the moment when when he gets to Doctor. What's his name again? Gosh,
Starts with an H.
the main, yeah, Hirulig, I think it is,
Yes, yes,
something like that, right?
yes.
It's the moment he gets there because he drops one of the most fire bars of the entire series when he talks about how a man only dies when he's forgotten. And
That's good.
I think it relates to Chopper because he gets there and he's scrapping with Dalton. Dalton's like holding him back to not rage and fight, to
Hmm.
fight on because he's going to be inheriting his will as a doctor. So
Right.
that is my number one Chopper moment.
That's a
Kind
good
of
one.
cheating, but kind of not.
That is a good one. And yeah, I think that's fair because it meant a lot to Chopper. And I'm gonna also say this: Dalton is one of the bigger letdowns power wise for his own because I'm thinking the whole time this guy could beat them, right? Because in my opinion, like or in my mind, he's like a buffalo or whatever, whatever bull, however you want to call it. I'm like, he
Right.
could take these guys, right? And then he keeps losing. I'm like, what is going on here? But he's kind of holding back to not get everybody else injured. I don't know.
Yeah, it's also a product of just early One Piece where
Yeah, it's
they
not
still they
fleshed
have to
out
be
all
the
the way.
strongest, right? So you're never going to look super strong when it's that early in the series,
Fair.
usually at least.
But him and Chopper have that nice moment when they clash and he's holding Chopper back, and there's kind of that little
Yes.
power struggle there for a second before Chopper kind of goes to the next level. But
Yeah, that's
no,
an ethical zone matchup right there.
that's right. That is a good one though. Next on our list is Blackleg Sanji. This will be
Okay.
interesting because you're known to be a little bit of a Sanji hater.
you know, when I'm on camera and keeping it professional, I'm Mr. Blackleg. I'm Mr. Blackleg now.
Mr. Black. People actually know me by that name, right? um,
Exactly, exactly. No, but I could acknowledge him, especially pre-time skip. I like him a lot better, I would say. I think
yeah,
maybe most people would have that opinion, maybe
I
not.
think
But
so.
um so my number three though is actually it's the first Mr. Prince moment when he saves them in Alabasta and he kind of kicks the banana, what's that called? Like the banana shark. Because
Yeah.
it represents his sort of espionage vibe, right? He always goes on solo missions where he kind
Hmm.
of needs to like cleverly figure something out. And this was one of the best examples of that, saving them
Yeah.
in Alabasta.
Well, and then he does that also when he's trailing the one lady later in Dressrosa. He kind of goes on his own mission.
Yes,
Her name,
yes. Viola.
that's it. Yes. I was thinking of her dress for some reason. I couldn't come up with her name. My number three for Sanji. Ooh, I'm gonna go. I went with Sanji versus Mister Two. I like the kicking
Okay.
battle. I like the back and
Yes.
forth, and I like the way they fought. And you know, he barely scrapes by with a win, but I like the way that they fought and just the aspect of him getting to fight somebody who actually kicks the same way he does. So that was
Yeah,
my number.
that's a good point. It stylistically lines up maybe better than any of his opponents, honestly.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the rat guy, which was, I mean,
Jabra,
that was a fine fight, but it wasn't a great style matchup like that one was. So,
sure,
um,
sure.
you're number two.
Okay, number two. I actually did have the first Jable moment. I think I like how it represents his power and his fiery passion. Um, I actually have kind of an interesting take when it comes to Diablo Jambre because what I'm hoping for, I don't know if people agree with this, maybe some do, but I hope he fights Green Bull for a lot of reasons. I think that
Hmm.
that's being foreshadowed. I think especially because of Green Bull's regeneration, right? He has a super powerful regeneration, and he hinted on Wano that when Raizo tried the Ninja Fire Scroll, that he wouldn't be susceptible to such an obvious weakness of fire, right? So I
Yeah.
feel like Sanji, at his maximum capacity, is going to have the fire to like actually burn through that regeneration. That's what I'm hoping
That's
he can
good.
maybe use his ability for
Now,
in the future.
just to play devil's advocate here,
Mhm.
didn't Green Bull get burned though by Momo's fire?
Momonosuke, Momonosuke,
Yeah. Didn't he get burned by that fire though?
not
Or is that
really. Like
considered okay,
he seemed to be
did
fine,
he didn't
honestly.
get burned, but he did take some damage there.
I think he like exited out of his form,
That's
but
what
he
it
still
was.
wasn't serious because he said like, "Oh, so you're
Yeah.
serious now," and he was about to get serious, and that's when the Shanks Wi-Fi hockey came into
Yeah.
play. So
Nope, you're right.
kind of unanswered questions there, right?
Fair play by you.
Yeah.
I actually don't hate that. I know for a long time, because if you remember the One Piece opening where they're all in like extravagant pirate outfits,
Kizaru.
he fights Kizaru, and people like
Yeah.
the speed matchup. I got to say, I did like the speed matchup in my mind, but
Yeah.
I don't hate the green. I don't hate the Green Bull fight at all.
I think it also has to do with because the SBS just dropped about Green Bull having like a big incident with women, and he already seems to not really respect women. So I think that's going to play a factor. And I also think Green Bull doesn't respect food either. So I think he's being built up to be like
Oh yeah, he
the
doesn't eat.
ultimate. And yeah, because exactly. So I feel like maybe I'm reaching, but I feel like those are very subtle hints that could easily foreshadow him fighting the Admiral in the final role, which I think most people would agree that that's probably where Sanji's ceiling is. So it makes
I would
sense,
say
honestly.
Admiral's fair. I'd say
Yeah.
Admiral end of series is fair
Hmm.
because, and if you're able to beat an Admiral, I mean, that still puts you slightly up. I mean, that's so I think that's very fair.
If you're the third of the Pirate King and you're beating an Admiral, that's ridiculous, honestly.
So that's a big time victory. So,
Yeah.
um,
Kind of went off
yeah,
topic there. Sorry, but
no, you're
I like
good.
Diablo Jambray. That's what I'm trying to say.
It is a very cool attack. My number one though is when he gets struck down by
Me too.
when
Yeah.
and when he says he needs a light and he's sitting
Yeah,
there
that's
and he's
hard.
all it's here in the corner and he's all bandaged up. I mean, that's like probably the coolest he was pre time skip, I would say.
Yeah, that's definitely the smoothest and the coolest move, especially
I
because
think so.
they're fighting such an OP enemy where nobody has a chance, and
Insane.
Luffy only has a chance because of the element factor, right?
Yeah.
If Luffy didn't have that, he'd get washed just as much bad as everybody else did. So, the fact that he could just stand up after that and light his cigarette, that's pretty
Very
dope,
cool.
honestly.
No, 100%. Was that your number one too?
That was, yeah.
Awesome.
That was.
And then we're going to move on to Usopp.
Okay.
Worst father award? Should we lead off with that? Worst father award? Do we want to go there early?
Worst father award. Oh my god, that's hilarious. But
Having the worst father award. Sorry.
Okay, so number 3 for me for Usopp. I have this solely because he doesn't get a lot of 1v1s, so I wanted to highlight a good 1v1, and that's Perona. It's funny because that arc is so revolved around trickery that it's just really right up his alley and his negativity to win that matchup. So I feel like just from a matchup standpoint, it's one of those few moments where it's like only Usopp can do this.
Yeah.
So that's why I like the moment.
No, I will talk about that at my number. We'll talk about it now. But the fake hammer to like just blow her mind and send her into like, which is great because he uses the real hammer down when he fights the mole and the one lady with Chopper. But that whole being extremely negative where nobody like Zoro, Luffy, everybody else can't do a thing, and it's Usopp who comes to save the day. It's really good. I'm glad you said that one. That was my number 2. My number 3. It was sniping the world flag. I know Luffy directs him to do it, but it's it's still Usopp sending the shot, and it's still, and them all standing there together. I kind of group this in with Usopp just because he delivers that blow to the world government flag.
Yeah,
but that's what I had
for sniper. It's his role as a sniper.
Yeah, he's got to take down the flag, and it's a big deal to shoot down the world government flag. He even acknowledges it himself. So that was my number 3. Beating Perona was my number 2 for the same reasons you said. What was your number 2?
Yeah, so my number 2 is burning down the flag. And I guess we can also maybe count when he snipes Spandam at the end. He snipes Spandam at the end, right? When he's on top of the tower.
Yeah, he shoots him again. Yes.
So that kind of those moments are tied because it's his major iconic sniping moments in Eddie's lobby.
Yeah. I'm still waiting. Are we gonna get a new Usopp moment here in Elbaf?
I hope so, man, because I really wanted one in Wano from like a sniping standpoint, and we didn't really get that.
But it was so hectic. I don't know if his style of fighting is like he does have good quick shots and everything, but there's not like a good sniping moment like he had in Dressrosa, and that kind of stuff. Like there wasn't a moment where he could really hunker down. My number 1, and I'm guessing we have the same number 1, challenging Luffy.
Yes,
because it takes a lot for a guy who's cowardly. He's tricked. He does all these things to fight your captain on and stand on principle the way he did. So my number 1 is challenging Luffy to the 1v1.
No, 100%. And that fight is actually a lot deeper than people think because the fight over what to do with the Going Merry is actually a representation of Usopp's insecurity about the crew, because
Yeah.
he had a lot of feelings of uselessness, right? And he views his contribution to the crew as bringing the Going Merry, because that was his thing.
Taking
So he
care of
has the
the
most,
ship and doing everything.
yeah,
Right.
he
Yes.
he has the most emotional attachment, and he was being like a JV shipwright throughout,
Mhm.
right? Just barely patching it back up. So yeah, that fight and how he used his tactical side to actually do good against
He
Luffy.
fought well. I mean, that's what kind of like so gets me sometimes is because he's so resourceful and he can go so far against Luffy. We need to see that more. We needed to see that more, I think, in some of his other fights. He
Sure,
does
sure.
he does do it to an extent, but man, he is planned out. He's got Batman level plans against Luffy. But
Hmm.
if he could just go a little bit further, but he also knows Luffy's weaknesses in that regard. So I think that
Right,
preparation helps there. And then
right.
I like at the Zoro's kind of role in that scenario also as being the second. He's we're not going to interfere. We're not going to do any of this stuff. We're going to let it happen because this is what needs to happen. Usopp stepped up and wanted this to happen. So I do think Zoro played a nice side character in that 1v1.
Yeah, 100%.
Next on our list is Nami. Nami's
Yes,
interesting
yes. Yeah, I'm.
because
I
her
don't know,
moments are
man.
always kind of tied in. Like, yeah, obviously, I think my number one is obviously the walk to Arlong Park because of her, but
Yep.
she's the catalyst, and her crying and Luffy stopping her from stabbing the tattoo. Obviously, that's a Luffy and her type moment. But dang, is that not an emotional where you like really feel like Nami needs these guys?
Oh yeah,
So
hundred
I
percent. So I guess we're
and
starting with number one off the
I'm sorry,
bat
I
on
skipped
this one.
ahead because she does like it's so good for her and like you get to really see her vulnerable side after you see her steal and kind of be so against these guys and not want to be on the crew, but then you see how much she really needs them and what she's going through. Sorry for
Yeah.
ranting there, but that's my number one because I think it was so important for her at the time.
No, for sure. I mean, it's her best moment, and it brings us into a moment where it's a badass crew moment to the walk to Arlong Park, and the adaptation's really good too, with the stabbing herself and the
Yeah,
emotion and just the culmination of that arc. It's a perfect choice for number one for her,
right.
for sure.
So let's work our way back down then. Two for you.
So two, I had for kind of a similar reason to Usopp. I had the double finger fight because I
Yeah,
enjoy when she gets 1v1s because it's not as prominent as the other crew members. And I think that fight specifically, we're wondering up until that point. We haven't really seen her in a 1v1, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think she had one up until that point. So it's like,
mm-mm.
how is she going to fight? She's obviously weak. She's going to have to be crafty. And we learn about the climate act and how it's used. And she has to, get down and dirty for the first time. So it was fun to see her figure that one out.
And I'm gonna hang right there with you. I thought that was great because we get to see her resiliency when it comes to like not saving her own city, because we know she's resilient in that regard. Like she wants to save her town from Arlong, but we get
Yep.
to see her take damage. We get to see her fight through adversity. We get to see her climb attack, use how's she going to use her weapon, what can it do, and that kind of even gives Usopp a little bit of boost because he made a cool weapon for her. I think everything he said there was really good because we get to
Yeah.
see Nami in a different way finally in a big time fight. You're number three then.
Yeah, so I had trouble with this one, not gonna lie, because I knew those were my top two. So maybe you'll have something better that will change my mind, but I did have the Khalifa fight as her number three
Yeah,
because I feel like it's just a good creative moment with her, and it kind of relates to the Sanji fight. How he's obviously not going to fight her. He
right.
got washed, literally got washed.
Yeah, I mean the bubbles and everything. I mean, obviously
Yeah,
Sanji gets put into that situation. We know
a
he's not going
lot.
to be
Yeah,
able to do anything, and we know that's going to be his weakness throughout. We get to see it time and time again. But then Nami gets to step up and kind of we talked about it in her second moment, but she gets to beat a relatively strong combatant. I mean, obviously she's not setting the world on fire, but she uses the lightning from her climate attack combined with the water and she
Mirage
wins that
tempo and
fight.
stuff too. Yep.
Exactly. So we get to see oh yeah, like that's a good one with the bubbles. She kind of creates her little clones and that kind of stuff. I think it's a solid moment. I would probably would have liked her to have another like more emotional moment somewhere because I mean she's one of the original three. She's got I just don't feel like she's gotten as much as we've gone further. You
Exactly.
know,
Yeah, she
she's gotten relegated to fighting with Usopp at Wano. You know, she just hasn't had a great moment like she did pre-time skip, in my opinion.
yeah. Yeah, and you know, people will argue and debate who's like the third main character. Most people acknowledge Zoro's ambition is like the second most
Oh
important,
yeah.
right? But some people argue is Nami the third most important or is Sanji the third most important, right? Sanji's probably the third most valuable, I'd say, just because of everything he
Mhm.
does. But I think thematically in the story, Nami's supposed to represent that third character, right, with the wealth
Right.
element.
Well, and
And it doesn't feel like it. She doesn't feel as impactful as she should for a main lead, a main female lead.
you know what? Actually, like, I'm gonna change. 3 was just her having great weather knowledge. Like, in the early time skip, she called it when Dragon showed up to Town. Like, she felt the shift in the weather, and they used to like highlight that kind of stuff. She would
Yeah.
feel like the changes in the wave patterns or stuff like that out in the when the crew is winning or the wind shifting. I always thought that was really cool stuff for her. Like, it didn't even have to be like a big deal, but oh, hey, the wind's going this way. We're obviously something's coming, something's trailing. I always thought that stuff was super cool when she was doing it. So
Yeah, 100%.
to me, that has lacked a lot. You know, obviously we spend more and more time on the islands now, so we don't get to see, some of the travel as much. But I
Mhm.
feel like it's kind of suffered for her when she had a bigger deal because she was the navigator and that was important.
Right. No, it definitely has. And when they exit Fishman Island and go to Punk Hazard, you kind of see a little bit of that. You see a little
Yeah.
bit of it when the Whole Cake Island squad is leaving Whole Cake on the way to Wano. But it really should be more prominent, especially now that Jinbei's joined the crew and he's the helmsman. So we need to see him have moments where he's navigating and or not navigating, when he's controlling and Nami's navigating, calling out the weather, things like
Right.
that. And you know, as you get to Raptor, what the sea's supposed to get more dangerous and more complex, right?
Yes.
So theoretically, you should see more of these moments.
I'm hope and you are right. There are some things. It doesn't even need to be a big deal. It just needs like, hey, this is happening. Hey, we're going through this type of weather. I don't know. I just feel like she's been a little bit more underutilized as we've gone on, which we've gotten to more
Fair.
combat, so that does make sense. But
Mhm.
I do like when the crew feels like a crew.
Yeah, no
Um,
doubt. No
and
doubt.
then we're gonna get into the big two. We'll go with Roronoa Zoro
Mhm.
first. I'm assuming we have the same three, but in what order? So
Okay.
let's lead off with you. This is your guy. Let's hear it.
Yeah, you may be surprised a little bit. I
Ooh.
think we're gonna have the same. I think we're gonna have two of the same three because I feel like I
Okay.
might shock you on this one. And it's actually something that you mentioned already. Is my number three, and
Okay.
that's when he tells Usopp that that's the burden of, or tells Luffy that's the burden of being a
Okay.
captain. If you waver, how can we have faith in anybody else, right? Because
That's really good.
that's the first inner crew conflict, and you see him step up to be that number two guy. And you also see it when Usopp tries to join the crew again, right? He's like,
Yeah.
nope, we're not doing this shit unless he, as a man, admits and apologizes for the situation. We're not allowing him back in. So I
Yeah.
feel like those two moments together are my number three.
That's actually, yeah. And now I see that you were just waiting for me to give you some good point and steal it. No, no. My number three is his proclamation when he's fighting Mihawk and he finally gets to see that level, but then he makes that call that I'm going to be the greatest swordsman of all time. He sees what it takes to be the greatest swordsman of all time, and it reconfirms what he wants to be.
Yeah,
And then that leads into it, like it kind of piggybacks off that moment. But him being able to fight Arlong with his injuries, and when you see it, like the blood and everything and the cut, I like that combined together. So obviously the moment where he's said, I'm going to be the greatest swordsman in
okay,
the world, and then it goes into Arlong and whoa, this guy,
yeah.
how's he moving or whatever
No,
Arlong says.
Arlon looked like he saw a ghost when he saw an
Exactly.
injured man.
How are you
Yeah,
moving or whatever, and it's just seeping out of him. It's a really strong moment for
yep,
Zoro.
yep.
um Number two for me, Zoro versus Mr. One.
Okay,
um
okay.
him ascending to the next level, being able to cut, and then this is just a great fight. It's what, probably the second or third best fight of the pre-time skip.
Yeah, it's up there. I think it's
It's
definitely the consensus best pre-time skip Zoro 1v1, I would say.
Yeah, because, well, yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that's the
Yeah.
best. I would have it 2 or 3. I'd have to double check all the fights, but I'd have
Right.
it 2 or 3. What?
It's hard off the top for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your number 2 for Zoro?
Yeah, so before I get there, though, I will say that I had the cutting steel as an honorable mention. I know we're gonna
Okay.
have kind of a different order, but I love cutting steel moment because of how it connects back to Rio and Wano. I think that's a
Mhm.
really good. I don't know if you'd call it a callback, but basically Koshiro described it in the exact same way that the Wano samurai were describing cutting the breath, and how
Yeah.
it is hockey related, but there's still a certain breath to certain elements. I think that's a
Mhm.
really cool concept in One Piece.
It
But
is.
yeah, let
It's
me yeah. Sorry if you want to respond to
No, you're
that.
good. No,
My
you're
number two.
no. That's perfect. Well said.
Okay. Yeah. So my number two is what you just said. The moment where he declares that he'll never lose again. It's just one of the best overall vow moments in manga
Mhm.
to me. You know, like the iconic scar across his chest. Like in One
So
Piece,
cool.
scars have meaning. They have depth, right? Kaido is scarred by Odin. He has the Odin PTSD. Luffy is scarred by Akainu. You know,
Yep.
Zoro and Mihawk. It just when you have
They
a
tie in.
permanent scar, it means something in One Piece.
And I also like, and just because I didn't talk about it with mine, I like that he tells Mihawk about the cuts on the back or a
Yes.
swordsman's shame, and he takes
Yes.
that slice to the front. That
Mhm.
whole moment for him is fantastic. I'm
Yep.
guessing we're gonna have the same moment for number 1 because it's the best moment pre-time skip,
Yeah,
give
it's
or
in the running
take.
for the best moment overall, for
It's, I
sure.
mean, the nothing happened moment. It's iconic. It's made Zoro one of the most popular characters in One Piece for a good reason.
Mhm.
It's fantastic. Go ahead. I mean, obviously, it's your number 1 also. So go ahead.
Yes, it's my number one, and I think for the reason that it's just not only an incredible combat and feat in that regard, but also just really, it's really the buildup of his character and what his character has become in that pre-time skip moment. Because before, he only joined the crew because he made Luffy got him out of a
Yeah.
situation, and he basically told Luffy that I'll kill you if you ever get in the way of my ambition. So now
Right.
this is Zoro flipping the table and being like, I'm sacrificing my ambition for you because I can only get to that top level if I make you the Pirate King first, if I have that mindset. And that's just an incredible moment, honestly. It's really the build up and culmination of his character in the pre-time skip.
And again, that's it's hard to debate, tit for tat. But if that's not 1, it's probably 2 best
Yes,
moments. Let me ask you something.
sure.
When Kuma shows up, and just obviously take away what you know and what's always come after. I thought that guy was probably the strongest guy I'd seen.
Yeah,
Like, I thought he was the biggest issue possible because he was so fast, he was big, and then you throw in the paw on top of that, and I'm like, how would this ever? How would they ever beat somebody like this? And
right.
really,
Because
he never gets beaten. He's just gets turned into a slave, or something happens to him in that regard.
yeah, he's just
It-
mentally nerfed, honestly, and
right.
like and physically nerfed. But you're right because when he shows up, it's still in that mindset, like I mentioned earlier in the show about Robin's devil fruits and how hacks they are in the pre-time
Mhm.
skip because we don't really have ways to combat them. So you're
Yeah.
thinking this guy's paws are so fast, they're so strong, and they're so hacks. How are you going to beat this guy, right? And I think when Zoro cuts him off guard, it's maybe he used Rio again. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I don't know how much damage it actually did because obviously it was steel, right? So
Yeah.
it's
No, I
just I
mean,
don't know, man.
I just saw when he first shows up, you're like, okay. And then he shows up again at Sabayoti and sends everybody flying, but you don't know that he's helping. He's
Exactly.
moving at such a speed where him and Rayleigh are having a conversation, and you're like, what are we gonna do with this guy? This
Yeah, he's
guy's
a
gonna,
major enigma for sure.
yeah. And I've always just felt like if Oda had to like put him away because he didn't know how to go anywhere else with him.
Yeah,
But
that's probably true.
obviously Zoro, one of the great just characters in One Piece, obviously. And then we're going to
Yeah,
transition Monkey D. Luffy. This will be interesting. I'm going to start with my number 3.
sure.
My number 3 was Gear 2 or Gear Second. When he first, when you first see that steam come off of him and he starts turning red, and then
Oh,
the ass whooping he puts on on Bluno after that, it's
yep.
just and then he's the jet punches and everything that tied into the move set and the look, I really enjoyed. So Gear 2 was my number 3.
Moments are badass when their names become terms that get adopted. Like
Yeah.
You catch a ball over someone. What do you do to them? You moss them, right?
Yeah.
Now, when you one shot someone, you blue no them.
Yeah.
That's how you know it's a
Exactly.
badass moment.
Yeah. No, and yeah, just because he gets beat so easily before, and he has this trick coming, or you're not trick, but he has this next level that he can go to. I really like the way that played out. So, what is your number 3?
Yeah, so my number 3 is actually when he stands off against the admirals in Marineford. Just that iconic moment where he's staring them all down. It's just like all the buildup in the war and how that moment came into place and how and the lengths he's willing to go through to save Ace. And then the Garp moment happens right after that. It's
Oh,
just
when
like
Garp lets him drop him, but it's a hell of a punch. It is
it's
a
just a great
hell of a
moment though.
punch.
It's
Yeah.
just a great it's a great moment. That's what
Yeah.
it's meant to be, right? Obviously he
Right.
can't fuck with Garp at that point. But yeah,
Not
just
many people can, clearly.
no, of course not. And they even made like an epic spread of the three admirals and just their scheme. Oh, I love that moment, man.
It's you're and I see. I didn't know like how to break down Marineford because it's just so special.
Yes,
Like every single, there's something always happening that's just insane, and
right.
obviously that's why it's one of the best arcs, that we've seen. My number 2 is the climb of when he climbs Drum Island with Sanji and
Oh,
Nami on him.
mhm.
I think that's the lengths Luffy's willing to go for his friends is always, one of his big things. But, carrying Sanji by his teeth to drag him up, dropping him, catching him, and just everything that had to happen in there. And the grittiness of the when it's animated, you see the finger marks and the blood coming out. And I just thought it all kind of played into a great moment for Luffy. So I went with the climb for Drum Island as my number 2.
Okay, that's good. I like that because our list is going to be different then.
Good.
I did consider that moment, but I did choose the Luffy versus Lucci final Gatling for my
Oh,
number 2.
yes.
I think just it's an incredible fight. It might be the best Luffy fight overall. I mean, you'd have to think, obviously, but I think a lot
Yeah.
of people would have that as the best one. And the
You
Gatling
mean
itself
pre-time
is just
skip or
overall,
altogether?
honestly,
Ooh, okay. I
like at
feel
least
like
in the
I bet you
conversation is
people I
great.
bet you people pick Katakuri though now.
Yeah, I can see that. I
But
can see that.
I'm with you. I pre-time skip I'm for sure in. We could have a debate altogether because
Sure,
him beating
sure.
Lucci is go
Yeah,
ahead.
that's fire. But I just love how Usopp is there, like yelling at him, because obviously it's their character conflict, and that's part of this arc, right? And their
Mhm.
friendship. And it's funny how Luffy he thinks it's like Sniper Cane, but it's still just it's an awesome moment. Like it's an awesome moment of willpower.
It
That's
is.
what the Lucci fight comes down to. It's the willpower, right? It's surviving the Roshuka gun. It's just everything in and of itself is willpower.
Lucci's also got a fantastic design. His devil fruit is fantastic.
Dude, and the Awakened one looks sick as hell too.
Oh, it's like a slim down version. Yeah, no, it's really well done. That's a great moment. My number 1 is when he punches the celestial dragon, just because of
Yeah.
what it means going forward, what it sets them up, and it just puts everybody on notice that the Straw Hats are for real.
Oh yeah, no, undoubtedly that whole entire moment is number one. It's arguably number one in the entire pre-time skit, and I think it just thematically embodies One Piece, right? Like one of the most important aspects of One Piece is the will of D and those characters and how they're supposed to bring the storm against the gods and tumble the gods down, right? And for Luffy to have just an epic moment like that on Marijua was awesome, and it's kind of like the manifestation of Zoro trying to do it too, right? Because earlier in the arc, he tried to do
He
it.
pops the sword out. Yeah,
Yes,
he's ready.
he's about to cut down the Celestial Dragon too, and everybody around them is surprised. They're like, "This guy's ruthless," right? It just shows how the Straw Hats are built different, and they're like, "Wait, so this guy's captain must be insane if this guy is the first mate and he's doing crazy
Yeah.
stuff like this, right?" So yeah, overall, that Luffy moment, the punch, the adaptation was really good on that too.
Oh, it's the blood, the crack, everywhere.
Yep.
Yes, it's great. It's also we get to see Rayleigh. We get to see him use Ryu, correct? Because he takes the cuffs off, right? Is that not?
Yes, yes,
Do we
that's
count
true.
that?
Yeah, it counts
Because
because
that's
he's
another.
using.
That's another
Yep.
when he pulls it. Yeah, I mean, I just kind of came to me when I was thinking about it, but incredible stuff. I mean, there's so many good moments pre-time skip. Pre-time skip some of the best stuff. I mean, just the crew, man. It felt like a crew. I feel like we get
Yes.
so split up now which is fine. There's some epic stuff that happens post time skip, but when we felt like a crew, it was really special.
Yeah,
Just because
100%.
he's my guy and I'm wearing his sweatshirt, Jembe,
Oh yeah, shout
first
out.
son of the sea.
Yeah,
He does have some good stuff. Obviously, they're not
absolutely.
like moments, but him fighting Ace for 5 days straight on land is a very impressive stuff because,
Impressive feat.
and Shady, you tell me, Ace probably had the highest potential out of anybody before he died. So
Oh yeah, I mean,
that's a hell of a feather in the cap. I mean,
yeah, yeah. Ace is portrayed to have that Pirate King level potential as well.
yeah.
So
And
there's
then
no limit to his ceiling.
he also he destroys Moria easily with a 1,000 brick fist, I believe it was. And then
Yes,
him
Edward.
saving him sacrificing borderline sacrificing himself for Luffy. I mean, obviously Akainu punches right through, but that's still very,
No,
for somebody
taking in the Kainu attack. Yeah.
for somebody you're not like, yeah, you know who Luffy is, obviously, but to go that far for somebody, and I thought that was a big deal too. So I did want to shout out Jembe. Obviously, he's my guy. I've been a fan for a long time, but just three quick moments for him.
Hmm.
Shady, what else you got? Because we've gone through three moments for each crewmate. We've got about 50 minutes. Is there anything else you want to talk about tonight before we get out of here?
Just kind of piggybacking off what you said. In totality, I miss a lot of these character interactions that we get in One Piece within the
Mhm.
crew. I know there's somewhat good reason for it because the plot and the scale is so much bigger.
Yeah.
So we're focusing on different aspects, and Oda's trying to incorporate more side characters into the plot because
Mhm.
he has to, right? But I do think it has come to the detriment of some of our main characters, unfortunately.
Which, like you said, there's a give and take, and there has to be somebody has to go. We can't have Nami and Trafalgar Law be the stars of the scene.
Yes.
I picked Law for obviously a reason, but Shady, I think this has been great, dude.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed this. The pre-time skip Straw Hats, we're both massive fans, and I'm hoping we can continue this. I mean, we could come up with another topic and do this maybe in a week or two.
Yep.
It was fun, dude. 52 minutes, and we got to talk about One Piece. So
Yeah, money,
um,
man. Yeah, good. Definitely a good starting topic, I feel like.
yeah,
And we can easily piggyback off this into some broader stuff, no matter
for sure.
what really the specific topic is.
So yep, we're gonna post this. If you see it, check it out. Let us know what you think. Let us know where we can get better. But I'm Doug. That's Shady. And we will see you guys next time.
Yes, sir.